Welcome, Amanda. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you share your story. I don't know a whole lot of, much about the music industry or music in general. And I know there are a lot of people out there who do. And the kind of intersection that you're bringing, how your story unfolded for you and how it impacted your music and all that. I'm just really interested to understand how all of that worked out for you. So, to that end, I'd love for you to start anywhere you're comfortable with your story.
My story is I got pregnant a month before I turned 20, so I was 19, and my husband jokes that I was teen pregnant. It's not a joke, but he will make fun of me, where I'll be an adult, and he's like, "Yeah, but you got teen pregnant." So it's just funny joke. No, it's not that funny. It's an inside joke, I guess. Um, anyways, yeah, so I got pregnant. I had my daughter at 20. So I guess I didn't realize it at the time. Um, but I also had issues before I got pregnant,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
with mental health and stuff like that. I had
Mm-hmm.
a really kind of chaotic upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't know what was normal, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So I already had issues as a teenager. And I mean, mind you, I was basically a child when I got pregnant. I look at 19-year-olds now, and I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe I had a kid at 19. They
Mm-hmm.
look like babies to me now. It looks
Mm-hmm.
insane to me that I had a kid at that point.
Mm-hmm.
um, but I had issues as a teenager, and I didn't really know what they were. It was just whatever, it was just teenager stuff, right? And then when I got pregnant, I think looking at it now, I had depression.
Mm.
And I probably had it before, and then the hormones accelerated. So when I was pregnant, I was also in a really bad situation, just physically, not abusive, but a bad environment. The
Okay.
house I was in was what you might see on TLC hoarders situation kind of thing. It
Mm-hmm.
was just very chaotic. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a good support system. Um, my boyfriend at the time, who I haven't seen in my daughter's 10 now. She hasn't I haven't seen him since she was 15 months old, so
Mm.
I just refer to him as my baby daddy now, which I guess is typical of getting pregnant at 19. um but he wasn't really around. He was in and out, and so I was basically home by myself a lot, in
Mm-hmm.
a really dirty, chaotic situation. And I didn't have any money, and at that point I already graduated high school because I was 19, and I was doing my associate's degree. I had just finished that, and I was
Mm-hmm.
planning on going to finish the last 2 years. So I was in this in between where I didn't have a job. I didn't have any, it was just me hanging out at home.
Yeah.
It was just a really not great situation. So I don't know how much of it was it was a bunch of factors, right? So
Sure.
I
Yeah.
assume there was mental stuff, and then there was also everything else around it
For
that
sure.
just amplified it.
Lots of stress.
Yeah, just a ton of stress. And so when I was pregnant, I would lay in bed and just sleep, just
Mm-hmm.
lay in bed and not do anything, and um nothing really. I'm trying to think about it. I would just randomly start crying, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just I assume normal depression stuff.
Mm-hmm.
um and then I had my daughter. um and then I was still living at my mom's house. This was my mom's house at the time. I lived with her until my daughter was almost 3.
Mm-hmm.
um and I live with my now husband, who was my boyfriend. Then I just moved straight from my mom's house into an apartment with him that we got
Mm-hmm.
together. So I've never actually lived by myself. My friends were like, "Wait, you never lived by yourself?" I was like, "No, I got pregnant, and then I
Mm-hmm.
immediately moved in with my boyfriend, who I'm now married to." And um, but yeah, I had when I had her, it was it was the same exact situation, except I now had a baby. So
Mm-hmm.
all of that plus not sleeping,
Right.
and then the stress of the baby, and then the physical stuff of me trying to
Yeah.
heal myself, and trying to shower, and then having her, and then terrified that she's gonna fall off or something. And
Mm-hmm.
so I can remember turning the shower off at one point because I left her in the room to sleep, and turning it off and being like, okay, I hear her.
Yeah.
Terrified that something was going wrong, and because
Yeah,
I
for
didn't have
sure.
anyone to watch or to do anything by myself. And
Mm-hmm.
I had at one point I got mastitis. I think that's what it is, right? With you have a
Mastitis.
block. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It all of a sudden I had no idea what it was, and it oh my god, it hurt, and I had this terrible fever, and it just hurt. And so I read to massage it, but I didn't really have anybody at the time. My sister was also living at home. At this time, my mom wasn't really living with us. It was a weird situation, and there's issues about it now, but she wasn't really living with us. It was basically me and my sister at home by ourselves. And at the
Mm.
time, my sister is 4 years younger than me, so she was like 16. And so it's basically just me and her hanging out. And so like I remember when I had it, I had to be like, can you please just take her so I can deal with it? Because I was like basically having a fever and I felt terrible all of a sudden.
Right.
And she watched her. And we recently talked about that actually, because she just had a baby too, and she was like, remember that time? And I was just like, yeah, I forgot about that. Which reminds me that I kind of blocked a lot of that stuff out, and she'll bring stuff up and I'm like, what? She'd be like, yeah, I remember that time. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess so.
It was like during pregnancy and postpartum.
It was mostly postpartum. Like I don't remember. Like it was mostly like the pregnancy stuff was a blur, just because I was like going through stuff.
Yeah.
And then like the first 2 years of her life were just kind of a blur, because I was just going through a lot, and like I wasn't super mentally present. I guess. Like I'm trying to think like. I mean, I don't like, when I look at it now, I'm like, oh, I clearly had postpartum depression, but back then I didn't know. I was by myself and I had no idea. Like, this wasn't talked about and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, it was very clearly postpartum depression, like, pretty hard.
Right.
So.
And nobody was, like, no professionals, no OBs or anything like that, or primary care. Did you have anybody who maybe, like, asked you any questions about it? About how you were doing?
I don't remember. It was mostly like a physical thing. So like I had the what was it? Just like the standard checkup when you like have a baby. It's like the right afterwards, and then the 6 week or whatever. And then it's like I think you only get like 2 or 3, and they pretty much just check on you physically. Like they didn't, and not that it's their problem per se about like what my home life is like, but like there was no questions asked. Nobody asked if I needed help. Like I was asked if I needed like nursing help. And I did in the hospital, and they did give me that, like, just because they were there, so they did help me, like, learn how to do it.
Right.
And I figured it out at home. Like, I breastfed her until she was, like, 14, 15 months, and it was fine. But that was, like, the only actual, I mean, I didn't ask for help because I didn't know to ask for help. I'm not trying to, like, put things on other people. It's just, like, I didn't know what was normal, and I know the situation in general was messed up. You know?
I mean, yeah, what you're describing is true for a lot of people who have postpartum depression, and that kind of like fogginess that you were describing. Yeah. It's hard to remember. It's hard to kind of even know what you should ask about anything. So yeah, that all makes sense.
I mean, looking back now, like at this point, let's call it 8 years because she's 10 now. Like I don't know. I just very clearly postpartum. I guess what like irritates me is that nobody around me like offered actual help, and I didn't have that big of a support system, but like I don't know, I guess that's still an issue in like my family now, is that like nobody, like that's one of the issues. I don't know if my mom's ever gonna see this, but like that's one of our main issues right now, is that like I got out of living at that house and like out of like that type of situation, and then finally was like this like big thing just like crashed, and I was like, oh my god, like that was terrible. Why did nobody like ever. And, like, my sister and I are, like, not bonding, trauma bonding, but, like, we're stepping outside of it now being like, oh, my God, that was terrible. Like, you don't realize it in the moment.
Yep.
And so we're coming out. Until we're out. So, it came crashing down when I moved in with my boyfriend, whom I now husband. And I was just like, why do I feel like I actually felt momentarily worse? Because I guess I was, like, safe enough to, like, feel this stuff. Yeah. And, like, it all, like, came crashing down. I was like, oh, my God, that was terrible. Like, why didn't someone, like... And it's just, like, a weird thing, too, because, like, because I don't know how long postpartum lasts, but I felt that way. Like the extremes of it were like less so after like the year and a half, but then I still felt that kind of depression, just anxiety thing for a while afterwards. And I just, because at a certain point I'm like, this is just normal. Like I don't know what is not normal. This is normal for me. And then like a few years ago, my husband and I talked about it, and I forget how the conversation started, but he was like, oh yeah, like you were definitely like when we first started dating, and I was like, what? You could tell? And he was like, yeah, you'd come over to the house and like you'd just stay in bed for like hours, and like I'd go outside and play with her, and I was like, why were you with me? Like, what were you doing? Was this fun for you? Like, what? If you saw that, why were you just like, I don't know, I liked when you were, I guess there were like waves, right? So like I liked when you were like high, and I just took that as like the low or whatever, and I was like, okay, like you clearly have issues with trying to fix somebody.
Oh my gosh. Okay, right. Okay.
I just thought it was funny. I was like, you clearly have issues. He was like, I don't think so, man. I was just like, okay, whatever you say. I'm better. Like I'm fine. It was a while ago, but I also just got I guess less than 6 months ago, and I don't know how much these things like interplay with each other, but I just got diagnosed by a psychiatrist as bipolar II,
Mm-hmm.
which I guess is a less extreme version than bipolar. And
Yeah.
I only went after the diagnosis is because like I still always just feel off, and so I think I just have generally mental health issues. And then like the hormones and then the situation I was in just amplified it, and they didn't really solve themselves. I had to like actively like like when I moved in with my husband at that point, it was like 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That was when I was like, that was the first time I was like, he was the one that was like, I think you need to talk to someone. Because I would like cry him calling. Like I would call him from my job, call him at his job crying. He was like, I think you need to talk to somebody. I was like, ooh. He's like, I think you should. Like he would like help me and stuff like that.
Great.
But it wasn't until like he suggested it that it ever popped in my head that there was people like this, like it wasn't normal, I guess.
Oh,
Because I
right,
didn't
that you
know.
could feel different. This was just how you felt.
Yeah, it's just how I felt. And so I just thought it was like not normal per se, but it was normal for me.
Oh, right.
And so I thought it was just like a normal thing that I was feeling. And then there was just like crazy waves where I would feel terrible. And like that was just how I felt. Like that was just how I would be feeling for my life, you know?
Right.
And I just couldn't be like other people for whatever reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, I guess going back to the postpartum thing, like, I mean, I feel bad about it. Like, I don't know if there's anything to feel bad about it, but like, my daughter's 10 now, and like, she'll be talking to her friends, and she'll be like, I don't know how it comes up because they're kids, so I don't know how conversations happen with them, but she'll just randomly be asking me, like, what were my first words? And I'm like, I don't know, like, and like, she asked it, like, I think she asked it in front of my sister, and my sister was like, and I was like, I don't know. And she was like, just make something up. And I was like, am I supposed to make something up? Should I lie to her? Or should I, like, I don't know what's right for, because I've told her, like, because she was 3 when we were still living there. And, like, it was like she had a different image of what it was like when living with Gamma. And, like, Gamma was all fun and would give her gummies and put her in front of the TV and watch TV. And, like, I was, like, like, just alone kind of thing. So she was very different things. And I would, like, I'll casually be like, I don't know what you thought, like, it was, but that was not like fun for me. Like that was really rough for me. And so like she's 10, so I don't tell her everything. So I'm like, I'll wait till she's older to talk about bigger things. But like in those situations, I'm like, I literally just, the entire first 2 years of her life are just kind of like a weird, sad, angry blur.
Yeah. Oh, I really appreciate you sharing that part of your journey, because this happens for a lot of people, and I know there's a lot of people who can identify with this. Just kind of going through it, not knowing that anything could be different. All of a sudden realizing that like the life that you had been living was impacting you, and now feeling the heaviness of this. And honestly, the postpartum depression can last for so long, especially if you're not getting the help that you deserve. And those symptoms can last for years. But yeah, so it's just, it makes me so sad that we're not doing a better job to help moms, so that ideally you wouldn't have had to suffer for that long. Somebody could have picked up on it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't know who, because like again looking back, I'm like, I don't know who would have except my immediate family, because I was mostly alone, and then like the doctors, I guess, when I got my checkups, because like after those initial like right afterwards, and then like the 6 week, whatever like the standard operating procedure is for like vaginal delay. I don't remember, but it was very like, this is what you do with it, and it was like 2 or 3 checkups, basically checking stitches and stuff. I don't remember anyone asking, and if they did, it wasn't like the questions that I would have been like, yeah, like that maybe they would have picked up on, and then I don't know, like I don't know. I don't know what would be, I don't know, home visits? I don't know, because I don't like.
Yeah, well, I mean, now, not as much even a couple of years ago, but now a lot of pediatricians are asking, because that's where you go.
That's what, yeah, exactly. I didn't, so that's what, sorry, that's what I was going to say is like after my, like those just standard like 3 things, the only time I ever went to the doctor afterwards with her shots, and I went there all the time to get her shots, and they didn't ask me anything. They asked me about her, and I'm like, yeah, she's alive. Here she is. Like, I mean, there's nothing to report on her. She's fine. Like, it wasn't her that was the issue. It was me that was struggling. I'm like keeping her alive. She's fine. But Because that's what I was gonna say is I guess like the pediatrician asking more about like that. Like the only time that I felt like they insinuated anything was like she was late speaking, and um because she had ear infections all the time, it turned out, so she couldn't hear the same thing again and again, so she couldn't repeat it or whatever. So once we got her tubes or whatever done at like 2, she started talking. Like it was pretty quickly. But they like at the pediatrician, they were concerned because she wasn't talking before the tubes, and they asked like I forget the exact question, but I remember it made me mad, and because I took it as like they were like judging me like for being alone and being a single mom. But what they asked was like, is dad at home? And what I'm like, when I told somebody this recently, they were like, it's probably because you talk to somebody while you're there. But if it's just her and I all the time, I'm usually sitting in silence or just talking to her occasionally. Like I'm not having full blown conversations. So I'm like, I don't know what they insinuate. I don't know what they meant by that. But that's the only time I remember them asking about my home life, was asking, is dad around? Because she wasn't talking. And again, it's not their problem, but theoretically, my well-being does impact her well-being. So like,
absolutely, yes.
So I mean, maybe they should ask more questions about like, but then it's intrusive. So I don't know what rights versus, so I guess it's complicated. I'm just kind of like, I don't know who would have picked up on it and when and why.
No, I mean you have a lot of good points, and you're pointing out the massive flaws in our care, in our system of care. Is that moms kind of like, you get all of this attention during pregnancy, make sure everything's going okay, and then a couple of visits postpartum, and then that's it. Nobody's really like, how are you doing? And that's been the case for a long time, unfortunately. But as you said, that like the pediatricians could be asking and can be asking, and that's the where things are going right now, thankfully. But I mean, what you're describing is so just such a real and true thing, that people aren't like, nobody's checking in on you and getting you the help that you need at that point. So it sounds like, going back to what you said before, that when your daughter was about 5 years old, that's around the time you started therapy.
I guess maybe she was younger. I'm trying to think, because it was pretty much like a few months after we moved out of my mom's house into the apartment with my now husband. Actually, it might have been like 6.5, 7 years ago. So maybe I thought it was. Maybe I'm underestimating how long we've been together, I think is what's happening. And I'm like, wait, we have been living in this city now for 7 years. I'm underestimating that.
That's all right.
So never mind. Yeah, no, it was actually younger than that, because I remember like it was a whole situation, because there was a lot of things that brought my husband to be like, I think because like I would like, because she was like also like super attached to me, because it was just mainly her and I. And so anytime like she wanted a lot of attention, she like, even now she like feeds off of my emotions. And so like she's very like a dog, sensitive to like, so when I'm in a bad mood, it basically puts everyone in a bad mood. So I have to like, which is really annoying, because I'm like, oh my God, can I just feel my feelings without like you picking up on it? It's so stressful, because then I'm like, oh my God, I'm the reason that's causing this, but I can feel my feelings. But it was like she would get like really clingy, and then I remember I woke up because I wanted to go to a yoga class, and it was like 5 o'clock because it was like an early yoga class, and I guess she had woken up, and then like she started crying and wouldn't let me leave, and like I just like sat on the floor and was sobbing, and my husband came out and was like, what, like we're just both crying, and always like, what is happening? Which is why I'm like, now I'm like, why did you stay? What was wrong with you? Like, did you love me that much already? Like, you're crazy. But that was around the time it was like that type of stuff, and then me calling him at work, it was like that like thing that he was like, I think you should talk to somebody, because he like, I think, recognized that this was like bigger than just like feeling upset at something. And so I think it was 6.5, 7 years ago, and I went to a therapist then at that point for like, because I was still on my mom's insurance, because I don't know, 25. I was under 27.
Right.
So under her insurance, it was free. Well, she paid it quite a bit because she had a bunch of people. Anyways, so it was free under her, and so I would think I was going every week for like probably like a year maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really helpful. Like it got me through like some initial stuff. It took a minute to like figure out where to find somebody. I know that's not what this is, but it's just like everyone's like, go to therapy. And I'm like, yeah, but there's different kind of therapists. And
Yeah.
like the first one I went to made me actually feel worse because she talked about things that were not at all relevant and were like blaming it on my father, who's like an alcoholic who I haven't seen in like since I was like 10. And I'm like, I get how that could be related, but like that's not relevant to why I'm crying in the middle of work, calling my boyfriend, and like
Right.
that's not relevant.
Right.
Um,
I'm so glad you're telling us this, telling me this. Um, and I'm so sorry that you. Sorry. I'm so sorry that you had that experience. But oh my gosh, this happened. This like therapists who are not like trained or who don't have the understanding of where you are in that moment because of
yeah,
postpartum stuff. It happens so often that people feel worse before, you know.
yeah,
Unfortunately, it's really another thing where we could just be doing so much better. And you could have,
yeah.
yeah. So you found after that therapist, what happened?
Yeah, after that, because I only went to her for one because I was like, I actually felt worse and I was crying about things that were not why I came in. It was like really weird. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to go to her again. So I literally went to her one time. I was like, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found another really, really wonderful one. And she was a CBT
Mm-hmm.
therapist,
Mm-hmm.
which was really helpful. It got me to like think about things. I'm sure everyone knows who's listening, and then you know what CBT is. And I was like, oh, this makes sense. I'm not mad about like my husband or my boyfriend not putting the dishwasher away. I'm mad that he's not listening to me. Therefore, I'm not being felt. Like I'm not being seen, and like it's
Right.
deeper. And I just need to make sure I'm clear on things and being like, I feel like you're not listening to me
Mm-hmm.
when
Mm-hmm.
blah blah blah. Um, so that was really helpful. It was just kind of like I don't know if we necessarily talked about like the postpartum stuff specifically. Like I don't. I think I just kind of at that point it was just like a general depression because it was like at that point like 2.5 3 years. It was like 3 years later than at that point that I had her. She was like three. So it was like just a general now carrying over of depression and just having issues. Um, and she put me. Well, she didn't put me on. She recommended that I go to my primary to get antidepressants, which I did. So I was on those for I think like 2 years. And then I went to her for like every week for like a year. And then I think I downgraded to like every other week. And then like, you know, like that type of thing. And just kind of petered that out. And then I was like fine for a while. Like, and not fine, but like gave me tools. And I was like, I feel pretty good. I don't really know what I have to talk about right now, you know.
Right. Right.
So, yeah.
How did these several years impact you and your music life?
Um, well, it obviously impacted me personally. But I honestly didn't do anything with music until I was 25, and I used to feel really bad and like about that and like why didn't I do anything? And I realized recently within the last like year or two that like if I believe in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I'm like I never really had like the foundational stuff
Mm-hmm.
to feel secure, and so I never really thought of my future. And so I was thinking about that, like with last year, being like, yeah, but Amanda, like, what were your plans after high school? Like, you did well, like, you did fine, like, didn't have any plans though. You just like applied to college, like, you went to a community college because we
Mm-hmm.
were poor, and so
Mm-hmm.
it was the easy way to get the 2 years, and then I was going to transfer in to get another 2 years to just finish. But like, I had literally no plans because I was just like living my life because I didn't have the mental capability to think beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I honestly didn't even do music until started doing music until I turned 25, and that was around the time that I moved in with my boyfriend because once again, I was just like, oh, I like the house is clean, we had like steady income coming in, like it was just like not like we're rich, but it was just like okay, I have food in the fridge because on like during that time also I was basically a kid and like didn't have support system anyway, so I was like on welfare, I was on food stamps, she was on the daycare assisted fund, like we were getting all the government resources, which is why I'm like when I see other people doing it, I'm like good, get yours because like I feel okay about it.
Yeah.
Like I put my money back in when I got a job and like I got off of it. Like it's just like a little boost. But
Yeah.
I didn't have any of that, so I didn't actually start doing music until all that foundational stuff was
Mm-hmm.
steady. That I was like, wait, what do I want to do?
Yeah. Makes a lot of
Um,
sense.
yeah, so I'm like, I didn't actually start really messing around with it for like 5 years ago, and I've just been like basically, which is again, it's like kind of stressful for me because I try not to beat myself up about it because there's like 13-year-olds on YouTube that are just like popping off, and I'm like over here just like learning how to play guitar at like 30 and like, oh my God, is this even worth it? Like Billie Eilish is winning Grammys at like 16. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, um,
It's hard. That comparison trap is a rough.
yeah, I'm trying not to do it because it's not relevant and like different life experiences and blah blah blah, and I didn't know, so it's fine. It's just kind of like that's I didn't start honestly until like 5 years ago, and so um, so like for the EP, for example, like a lot of that stuff was like more introspective and stuff like that. So I was talking about like baby daddy relationship and kind of how that came to be, because like um, I don't know if this is the case, but in my mind, I'm like I feel like 19-year-olds don't just get pregnant because like everything's cool beans. Like there's probably something off
Mm.
in some way. Like they're looking for something. Like I was looking for someone to like I guess support me, like
Mm-hmm.
love me, so I could feel love. Like I was trying to create a like I wasn't trying to create a family because the pregnancy was not on purpose. It was cause and effect. I believed something that I shouldn't have believed. It was kind of naivety and believing somebody, but like um it wasn't because I was like happy in my life. It was because I was looking for something, and like that's um so that's kind of what like the songs from my EP were about, and kind of because they were in
You,
October. Sorry.
you specifically wrote a song about your struggles with postpartum depression.
Um, I don't think I put it out. I've written a couple songs about it. It's just like I've talked to my friend about this because she's had a lot of trauma and like abuse and stuff like that too. We never really write songs typically about the thing,
Mm-hmm.
and like it's usually like about the feelings, but even then we don't
Yeah.
really do it because I tried to sit down and do it, but like I didn't even know it's almost like too much that I didn't even know what to say, because
Yeah.
with like writing a song you kind of have to pick a thing. You can't just be talking about like an entire huge list of things. You got to pick something kind of and narrow it down, or other people can't follow. It's too much.
Right.
Because I think it's so, because I tried to sit down a bunch of times and be like, okay, and then there was just too much that I wanted to say, but then it was like too specific, but like it was just like a lot, and then I didn't know how to do it, and then I was like, what am I trying to get out, like what feeling? And I was like, it's just general sadness and overwhelm, and I'm like, what kind of song is that? Like what am I doing with that song? Like is this supposed to be inspirational? Because it's not inspirational, it's just a really sad. And so I just kind of half finished those songs, and I'm just like, and I don't know now if it's like too late sometimes to write about these types of things, because at this point I'm like, yeah, it's sad, but I'm like, I've learned stuff through it. I'm not like
Mm.
trying to silver line trauma, right? It's just kind of like it
No.
sucks. But at this point I'm like, I've had other life experiences. I'm mostly okay. Like I can talk about it with people, but I don't know if like me writing about it through music and creating songs, cuz like now that I'm doing music, like I'm full time doing music now for the past year and a half as like a lead singer and like songwriter, and I get paid for like vocal sessions and stuff like
Cool.
that. Like the point of songs is to make people feel something theoretically or tell a story. Like, and so like if I sit down to write that, I'm like, what am I trying to get people to feel? Am I trying to get them to feel sad? Like, do I want people to feel sad? I don't really want people to feel sad. And so if it's just for me to express my sadness, I'm like, there's other ways for me to express that I don't necessarily even feel called to through writing, because
Oh, okay.
honestly it just doesn't. I prefer to talk some things out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so like the issues I've had with like my mom and stuff like that, I've talked, like I've written those things to her and through letter and stuff like that. Like I don't feel called to write a song about that per
Got
se.
it. Got it. Yeah.
So I don't know, that's just like a weird maybe me thing that I don't necessarily sometimes feel like. I wrote a song about like my baby daddy situation, like I said, how I was 19 and how, because I used to be like really down on myself about like, God, I was so stupid, why did I believe that, like why, like, and then I look back as like 30-year-old me, like, Amanda, you were a child, like you were looking for certain things, you thought it was that, it turned out not to be that, like you weren't stupid, like it's just not stupid, it was naivety and believing somebody basically.
Yeah, I mean that's to your point, like being able to have that 10-year perspective after you've done some healing and you have some
Yeah.
distance from it. Things you can look back with a little bit more compassion now that you understand more about what you were going through at the time. It's really hard when you're in it to feel
Yeah.
compassionate about towards
Yeah.
yourself or um, give yourself any slack. You're just in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, with that kind of historical perspective, I suppose, what are the things, or some of the things that you've learned about your journey now that you have this like perspective?
Um, I don't know about the learn. I guess I've just been, and this is like recent, the past like year or two, that I've been like not so hard on myself and more examining why things happen, not just beating myself up over things, but just like, because like again, when I like now, not that it's like an age thing. I'm like now that I'm 30, and like I'll like look at kids who are like 19, in my mind 19, like that are kids in my mind. I'll look at them and think that they still look like babies to me. And like looking at my pictures, I'm like, oh, I still look like a baby. I would be like, it made me think of like, because there's like that therapist thing of like you, or like the self talk about like, would you say this to yourself as a 5-year old? Like basically like picturing
Right.
yourself as that. And like when I
Yeah.
thought of that, I was like, I was like, and then I guess as I'm getting older, I'm like looking at these teenagers, which I was 19, and I wouldn't have said that to that person. Like they're clearly like struggling,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's more just like, I guess the compassion.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it would be the compassion and just more like looking at the why, not so much like what
Mm-hmm.
are the results and consequences, but like why, what could have led to this, and not
Yeah.
just like cause and effect. Obviously, like things lead to cause and effects, but like what led to that, and like analyzing that, and then like trying to, I guess, fix that thing, because
Mm-hmm.
that thing didn't get fixed when I had her, and it didn't get fixed for years, and I'm still like trying to fix it now, and it's better. But like now,
Fix it for you personally, or fix it between you and your daughter, or
no, like fix it for me, because I guess like and like not that it's related to postpartum and stuff like that, but like especially talking to my sister, we're realizing like my mom had issues. Like she was married to an alcoholic, had me on purpose because she wanted something to love her. And she was going to leave my dad, but then found out she was pregnant with my sister.
mm,
And so she stayed. And so there's a lot of like stuff there that she like then made further like stuff down the line, and then obvious like affected us. So we're both like kind of figuring this out.
right?
And so me realizing like I don't want to do that to my daughter, and I don't think I'll do the same. Like everyone's gonna mess their kids up, but I don't want to mess her up in that same way.
Okay.
And I know that I won't do that because I'm aware of what she did. I think for like
Yeah.
85% of the part, so I can at least avoid 85% of that mess up.
Mm-hmm.
But then I have my own mental health issues, like I said, where I was earlier on when I was just diagnosed with bipolar II, and I only figured that out because I still like have these like waves and stuff, and I was like, oh my god, like antidepressants are still not working, because I stopped doing them like a while ago because I just felt numb, like nothing. I hated that, and I rather just feel like the ups and downs. And I had like the tools from therapy and stuff. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna like chill, and I'm gonna see how it goes, and as long as I'm not like crazy dipping, I'm gonna stay off of it. And I've been good, but it's just like kind of nagging.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I got diagnosed with that because my sister very clearly has it. My dad had it, and there's like a familial thing. So they just said, okay, cool. But like I'm inconsistent, and so I worry that that sometimes will impact my daughter because she is so like she's so able to pick up on my emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and like I don't want her to read my up and down swings as inconsistency of like loving her. I guess
Uh-huh. Right.
I don't know how to if that makes I don't know how
No,
to.
yeah.
Okay.
I totally hear what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you're sharing is just our family history impacts us. There's no way around that. And you have done so much work, it sounds like, to really piece things together, so that you can stop the generational whatever was happening
Yeah.
with your mom, and probably who knows how far down the
Mm.
line. Um, but it's a lot of work to be the person who's doing the healing, and and trying to stop that from going down the line even further. It's great and amazing that you're doing that, for yourself and for your daughter, and really grateful that you've shared this with us.
Of course.
So, for what would you say to people who might be in, let's say, similar situations, that you had, who might be listening right now? Like, what would you say to them if you were giving them some of what you might have needed at the time?
This is a generic thing, but like, I guess get help sooner, but like I didn't know that I needed help, so that's kind of like a weird thing to say. It's just kind of like,
Yeah.
I don't know, because I would be like, get a support system. You can't just get a support system. Because I feel like the biggest things for like this type of stuff is like support systems and help, which is essentially a support system.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, just reach out to people that you feel safe with and like ask for help, or like even I guess if you have doctor checkups, like talk about it. Like I don't know if I would have even thought to talk about it, quite honestly, at a pediatrician, because it was all about her. So I wouldn't have been like, hey, I'm having these feelings. Like,
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. So just I don't know, get help, but only if you recognize you need help.
Well, right.
I'm not very good at this. I don't know.
No, you're absolutely spot on. I mean, my assumption is that anyone who's listening to this is here for a reason. This is a very specific podcast just focused on these things. So sometimes people wander in and listen to a story and start to realize that they maybe are having some similar experiences, and so what you're providing and what you're offering is super important.
Okay. I tried. I tried.
You did.
I don't know. I tried.
Yeah, well, I thank you so much for your time and sharing your experience and your journey with us. And I know that you have been working on your music, and people can go and listen to some of your music at your website, amandacunningham.com.
Yep.
Also on Instagram and TikTok.
Yes.
They can find you. So thank you so much for your time and sharing with us today.
Thank you for having me on today.